Hey, everybody, this is Jim from Alabama, and whoo, it's a great day to be alive. I tell you what, it is a wonderful day here in the great state of Alabama. The sun's shining. I was out in the yard with the dogs. And you can probably see I got a little bit of sun right there on my neck, a little bit, probably maybe kind of burned a little bit or something. But it is an absolutely gorgeous day here. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk with you about is the sun and kind of the origins of the sun. Okay, but first let's talk about way back in Genesis. Okay, in the creation. Okay, God created the Garden of Eden and everything. And have you ever really thought about what it was like in the Garden of Eden? There was no work, no toil. Adam and Eve, they didn't have to do anything except for, just kind of flit around and eat the fruit and um, eat the vegetables and stuff like that. Everything they didn't have to work for it or anything um, because a little bit later, God said that He was taking away the abundance of the earth and the labor of the earth. He was going to diminish it. So, it had to be like really booming. You plant a seed or something and boom, just all these vegetables come up or anything like that, everything like that. And actually, that happens here on Earth today, believe it or not. In Alaska, you can Google Alaskan garden pics, and it is just truly amazing. I mean, here's some examples. Here's this first picture is an onion grown in Alaska. Take a look at that. Look how big that thing is. That's an onion. Looks like one of those sweet onions maybe you get at the grocery store or something. Okay, take a look at this one. This is a cabbage. And the one next to it, the guy's got carrots. Can you believe that? The cabbage, I mean, is big as that woman. There's several others. Here's another one. This guy holding a big, maybe it's like a zucchini or some kind of squash or something. And this dude looks pretty big, but I tell you what, that zucchini looks really, really big. Here's one more. The tomatoes up there can grow as big as your hand. I got pretty big hands. Okay, so I mean, a tomato as big as your hand. I mean, heck, that's amazing. But maybe that's what the Garden of Eden was like. But how did these vegetables get to be like this? Especially up in Alaska, it's supposed to be all cold and stuff and everything. Well, the key is up there in Alaska, for about 2 to 3 months, they get pretty much 24 hours of sunlight. Maybe it's closer to 20, but it's between 20 and 24. So all of this sunlight every day, each day, every day for 2 or 3 months produces these types of gigantic vegetables. Is that not amazing? I mean, I was looking at some of the pictures. They were just blowing my mind. But that right there, to me, is an example of how of what God was talking about, the abundance of the earth, because that is really abundant. I mean, if we had that all the time, there would be nobody hungry. Zero. Nobody. Okay. But let's talk about when these two lights in Genesis 16. Remember Genesis 16 in the King James Version, it says that and God created two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. And then here's a stickler for me. It's just a sentence fragment, and yeah, I don't like the sentence fragments. I'm a strict grammar guy, so I really don't like sentence fragments. They really set up red flags for me. So, but anyway, that's Genesis 1:16. Now that's the King James translation. Let me give you the Jim from Alabama translation. Okay, I'm going to read it to you right now. Okay, this is Genesis 1:16, the Jim from Alabama translation. Okay, and God brought about a covenant between two great lights. This covenant set in motion that the greater source of light or illuminated body, whichever one you want to say, should be to rule the measure of the day. And the smaller source of light holds its dominion as a rolling loop amongst the stars. What would a rolling loop be? That sounds to me like that might be an orbit. Does it to you? So now that right there brings us to a very peculiar point. Okay, so we have a physical manifestation of Earth's abundance through all of this light, 20 to 24 hours of light up there in Alaska and everything. We see how huge the vegetables get and everything. We know that the Garden of Eden was, a place where they really didn't have to work, or, I guess a lot of bliss, everything. And but so how does this fit together? Okay. Well, I tell you, I've got a theory. Okay. From my retranslation, this tells me that what Genesis 1:16 is saying is that God set a stationary light, what we know as our sun, and that is to rule the day, to measure the day. The earth was still rotating on its axis, and then there was a lesser light also in orbit with Earth around the sun to provide light on the other half, on the dark side of Earth. So basically, at that time, during Adam and Eve, it's my opinion that there was light on Earth all the time. Okay, there was never any darkness, and that would explain, how the Earth could yield its strength to Adam and Eve with very little or no effort, even. So, what happened to this light? Why don't we have this light anymore? Well, I tell you, I've got a theory about that too. When Eve fell, truly Adam, I don't think really actually fell. He just did that to, protect Eve, basically. But that's for a different video. But anyway, when there was sin introduced into the world. Okay. Now remember, before this, with the little mini sun following Earth, to give it light on the backside, everything was in perfection. Everything was in perfection. God had everything perfected. Okay. But when sin came into the world, that caused imperfection. Okay. And so what happened? That smaller light, okay, that would illuminate the backside of Earth, you know, fell out of its orbit. I don't know how. I've kind of speculated in my own head that you know how our moon, you know, is constantly moving away from Earth. Well, maybe somehow this thing just kind of moved back. And then what happened to it? I am theorizing that it actually crossed the path of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter is a very interesting planet. Okay, it's the largest planet, supposedly a gas giant. You know, but they do say that it's got you know, a heavy core, like rocky core, metal core, or something like that. Another thing is it has got a plasma tail. They call it in Wikipedia a magnetic tail, but we all know it's plasma tail. It's got a plasma tail that's about 500 million miles long, and it stretches almost all the way to Saturn. Okay. And what's another distinguishing characteristic of Jupiter, besides it being the biggest planet? Yep, you got it. It's that big old red dot. Bing, right there, kind of off center from it. How'd that thing get there? Why's it got a big red dot on it? Yeah. So what I think may have happened is when sin came into the world, this lesser light was pulled or shifted out of its orbit some way and actually collided with Jupiter. And I think that was the beginning. That was the beginning of what we now know as, or what we've come to know as, Planet 7X, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it. And that makes sense. And I'm going to show you some more pictures, and I'm going to pull out my whiteboard here, and we're going to go over some things. But let's see if it makes sense to you. Hey everybody, I'm back. Now you get to really see how wild good old Jim from Alabama's hair really is. But and look, I already know somebody's giving me the old squint eye. Hey, that boy got some kind of pagan stuff up there on that board. What are you talking about? So no, I am totally far. I'm far from that. But I'm going to use it for a point, because you know, back in the ancient times and everything, these symbols right over here actually had a lot more meaning than what everybody says. These are actually, if I can get my finger right, planetary symbols or something. But let me show you what I'm theorizing here. Okay, so we have the sun, and I'm sorry for the glare. Sun, Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and then Jupiter up here. Okay, so what I'm thinking is, during the let's see here, let's do it in blue. I think that this planet, Planet X, whatever you want to call it, Planet 7X, Planet X, Nibiru, whatever you want to call it, I think that this was the lesser light, and it was in orbit also around our sun. Okay, so let's put him up here somewhere, and we'll just call him planet 7X. Okay, he was up here. Now, this lesser light, like I said earlier, gave light to the backside of Earth, so that the Earth was always in light. Okay, always. Now then, and everything was in perfection. God had everything. He always has everything under control. I was going to say everything was in control, but he's always got everything in control. But everything was perfect. There was no sin, no anything. And then sin entered the world, and somehow this joker here got out of his orbit. Okay, he crossed his boundary. Okay, say this is his boundary right here. Okay, let's say this is Jupiter's boundary right here. Okay, that's Jupiter's orbit right there. Somehow he got pulled back or out of his orbit some which way or another. And I think that this planet 7X, planet X, collided with Jupiter here. Okay. And there's some more interesting things about Jupiter. Jupiter has like 80 moons. Okay. The biggest of which are, let's see here, Io, Europa, again, Genizamid, I can't remember that one, and Callisto. Okay, those are the four biggest moons. So what if this second light up here behind me had like an outer crust, or made of some kind of material that we might not even know about, and when it collided into Jupiter, all of those fragments just broke apart, totally broke apart, and actually became moons or satellites of Jupiter. But the core of this lesser light was shot off toward the sun. So they get hit, boom, boom, and then this joker here gets shot off down around the sun. Now then, what's it going to do? Hey, it's going to start a different orbit. Okay, it's going to start a different orbit. So then this joker, he goes shooting off, no telling where to. Okay, and like I say, the effects on Earth would have been diminished light, okay, and diminished production or yield from the Earth, insofar as like garden stuff, fruits, vegetables, what have you. Okay, now then, this right here is extremely, this symbol right here is extremely interesting. Okay, they just had a this is the way I ran across it. They just had a discovery, I think maybe a week or two ago, up in Scotland, of some monolithic stones that had carvings in them that look like this. Okay, now this is actually kind of funny. I gotta get an interview with this guy right here, but and maybe he was just talking off the top of his head or something, but because they were so excited to find this. But he was telling the TV crew that was there filming them, digging it up and everything. The archaeologist guy was telling the TV person, "Oh yeah, look, here's a picture of a mirror, everything, and there's a little comb down here and everything. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Who the heck would spend the time to carve in a monolithic stone for people centuries in the future, eons, a mirror and a comb? That's like me, taking a big slab of rock and just thinking one day, let's see here, I want to carve a pair of my favorite hiking boots and my favorite fishing pole, so that people in the future will know that I went hiking and fishing. No, let's look at this. Okay, now then, this right here is, these two things right here are the planetary markers or planetary symbols for Jupiter. Okay, so as we know, things, just like Joel tells us, okay, people, rulers, religious leaders, they will take the truth, the true writings, or in this case, stone carvings and things, and they will take it and they'll gnaw on it, they'll twist it, they'll distort it, they'll turn it around until there is no truth left in the minds of men. They let it wipe out of everybody's memory. And I think that's, this is another example of this, because if you notice the Z, how the Z starts from right to left. Now, a lot of the ancient peoples, they wrote from right to left. Here in the Western world, we normally write from left to right. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for us, it doesn't feel right to make this shape. It feels more right to do it that way for us, because we write left to right. But like Hebrew, they go from right to left. And I'm sure many other ancient languages, they went from right to left. So it would be very natural for them to do that. Okay. So that's just another way they flip this thing around to fit, what they want us to do. And simultaneously, they have like diminished the relationship between this and this right here. Okay. So let's look at that relationship. Okay. So now these two things were on a big stone. Okay. I'm just going to kind of mark through some of these. Let me do it with this one here. This was on a big, like kind of monolithic stone, like that. Okay. And you can go to Google and you can look at pictures. You just look up stone carvings, ancient stone carvings, Scotland, or recent stone carving discovery, Scotland, and you'll find things like this. So what did these symbols really tell us? Okay, we're pretty sure it's not like a mirror and a comb, but let's look at this. Okay, so this symbol here, this Z, is the ancient planetary symbol for Jupiter. Okay, so what's happening here? So we got a reference to Jupiter here. Now then, this is one I actually forgot to put up, but let me put this one up. This one here, let me do this. Okay, I'm gonna put this in red. Okay, so this symbol here is the planetary symbol for, guess what? The sun. Okay. Now then, what do we have here? We have two similar signs to this sun right here, okay? But what's going on in here? Okay, I think what it is it's saying that this right here is Jupiter. One of these is Jupiter. One of these is our planet 7X, Nibiru, whatever. They've come in contact, close enough contact. Remember, we live in an electric universe, okay? So they've come in contact. They both have plasma. They both have really strong magnetic fields, magnetic charges, okay? So these people are actually showing us that these two things came together. And to them, to a viewer here on Earth, these plasma discharges with these two huge bodies being so close, they would actually look like two suns, basically. Probably a big sun and a little sun, okay? Because of these plasma discharges. I'm going to try to get an interview with Dr. Hemrick, the amateur astronomer that actually did the filming of the comet sighting Springs going past Mars and how it lit Mars up. I'm sure that everybody's seen that, or we've talked about that, with Gil's interview and everything. But that's what, to me, that's what this is saying here. Okay. Remember, they wanted to keep everything simple. Okay. So that people in the distant future could decipher these things. So they were using, what they have. Okay. So this is showing them coming together. This right here is showing motion away. And maybe this is what it looked like. Maybe that's what it looked like to them. After it hit into Jupiter, and remember, Jupiter's spinning, okay? So it probably collided with Jupiter and boom! And I'm telling you, it was probably the most spectacular thing that these people have ever seen, because it was probably a huge streak, brilliant streak across the sky, because this thing, would have just collided with Jupiter, another really strong, plasma charged, magnetically charged body that's many, many, many times bigger than it. I think Jupiter's about 318 times as big as Earth. Okay, we're thinking that this is probably 7 times as big as Earth. Which, I mean, to us, that's huge. But to Jupiter, that's just a little peon thing. But so then it glides across the sky, and then from there, boom, hits the sun, and then it's off on its new orbital path. Okay. Now then, let's talk about these symbols for Jupiter here. Okay. To me, you say, why would they pick these two symbols to represent Jupiter? Well, let's look at this. Okay, let's say that this line right here represents the planet X, planet 7X, Nibiru, its orbit. Let's say this line here represents Jupiter's orbit. Okay. Now, how are you going to tell somebody in the future that's not going to know your language that, hey, these things crossed and came together? Okay. I would say it just like this. Okay. That this planet X crossed this one right here probably means a boundary. This one crossed its own boundary and then came in contact with Jupiter. Okay. It's just saying that this one right here, this symbol right here, is this planet, Jupiter, its boundary was encroached upon. Okay. To me, that's what that's saying. Okay, let's look at this one, that funny looking 4 figure. This one to me tells an even better picture, or paints an even better picture than this one, because this one here, now remember, everything is all about perspective. Okay, everything is about perspective. If your mind cannot grasp that there was another lesser light, lesser sun, everything that was orbiting our sun, then you're going to be lost. Okay, but let's take a look at this one. Okay, let's just do this one in black too. Okay, so we have this funny looking 4 here. Okay, so we got this, we've got a point here of contact, and then this thing right here. Okay, this line going off. So what if this stuff here, okay, what if we did this? And we said this is Jupiter. Okay, look at this. Look at this point right here. Okay, that's extremely close to the point where this, Joel calls that unknown thing, island of oblivion, many different names. Obadiah calls it the ox of the Lord. But is that not is that not absolutely amazing? Look at that. So let's just put that right there. Look at those two. Look at that. What do you think of that? Now then, let's get back to this one. Okay, so that was a point of contact. What's happening? Boom, it's flying off. Where is it flying off? Past some boundary. Okay, that's why the little mark is there. So basically it's been cast out. It's been cast out. Basically, I guess, into outer darkness. So what I'm saying with all of this is, I believe that this is the origins of our Planet X, Planet 7X, Nibiru. And this is how it all started, by this lesser light being hit by Jupiter, falling out of its orbit, being hit by Jupiter, and slung around the sun. And like I say, it probably had some kind of crust or metallic stuff on the outside that was broken off during the collision. So basically, what is traveling through space right now is just the core, probably just the solid core of this lesser light. And Gil has a great discussion about that, because I think it was actually in our last interview too, that this thing is so dense and so heavy, it's probably solid metal, that it just plowed straight through Planet Ceres. And Planet Ceres would have been somewhere probably around here, maybe in between Earth and Mars, maybe. I can't remember. But yeah, it just plowed straight through it and totally disintegrated it. That's how we got our asteroid belt. But these are some things to really think about. And think about this too. Is this one of the secrets that, like I said before in one of my other videos, that's being kept secret from us by these secret societies? Yeah, I'm sure they know a lot more of the real truth of our history than what we've been told. Definitely more than what we've been taught. Okay, because a lot of those guys, they basically worship this thing. You know, I think they call it Marduk, or and you know, different names like that. They actually worshipped it. And you know, if you look at pictures, even of the Egyptians and stuff, you know, they actually had, you know, on their headdress things, on their money, this actual thing. And like Joel says, Joel said in all throughout his book, he said, tell every generation of this, so that they'll have complete knowledge of this thing. And don't hold your tongue about it. Well, these ancient people, they tried their best. They have tried their best to tell people. I think they were actually living up to, you know, to what Joel said, because you're not going to put in a stone monolith, carve in a stone monolith, some everyday something. No, you will carve something that is extraordinary, that has affected you and your people and your culture and the world significantly. Because what do you want to do? These people wanted to warn people in the future. So it's just things like this. Okay, things like this, putting the pieces together. But we have to do that, you know, from more accurate translations. And so now we're seeing and we're learning that a lot of our history has been, you know, altered or obscured in some which way to hide things, to basically blind the populace of things that have happened in the past and things that are going to be happening in the future. And you know, I can't make any predictions as to dates or anything like that. You may have to watch some of Gil's videos for that, because he's the astronomer person. I'm definitely not. But we need to really dig into this, you know, together. And like I say, I'm going to make a follow-up video on how I did the retranslation of Genesis 1:16, and because, like I say, it's a fairly straightforward, fairly easy one to do. But I'm only going to put that video on Patreon, on the Patreon channel. So so be sure and join that Patreon channel if you want to actually see how I do it. Like I say, this is a very simple one. So a lot of them are you got to dig pretty deep, but this one here is a very good starter to see kind of how I do the retranslations and everything. So be sure and hop on that Patreon channel. And listen, I know that there is going to be some people out there that are, you know, going to actually look up these stone tablets and things like that. They were the ones that were found a couple of weeks ago were found in Scotland by the University of Aberdeen up there, archaeologists up there. So I know somebody's gonna look that up, and you're gonna say, well, Mr. Jim, those stones were dated back to the 4th century AD. I mean, that's perfectly fine. That is perfectly fine, because think of this. Think of this. There's always been historians among us. There's always been people that love to record things, and probably, rulers and leaders. They had, you know, people assigned to do that very thing. Scribes and historians and things. So what if a brilliant scribe or a brilliant historian or even a brilliant leader understood that, hey, the Greeks are using this Z letter to symbolize Jupiter. So maybe to preserve this information that we have from our ancient times, maybe we should redo that into kind of, for them, their modern language, to preserve it for future times. Think of that. That could have been what had happened. And this is just a little side note. Have you ever thought about why there was no historical records before the flood, really? I mean, of course, the flood would have maybe destroyed them or anything. But if you thought about that, why is that? Well, I'll tell you why. It's simple. People lived hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years back then. So heck, if you wanted to know what happened in history, you just went and lived with somebody that that lived through it for a couple of hundred years. I mean, hey, if you're living 600, 700, 800 years, you don't have a problem doing that. And then you can learn every minute detail. So back then it was basically a verbal history, handed down from generation to generation to generation. And then after Noah's flood and the lifespans were significantly decreased, they thought, hey, we better start writing this stuff down some which way or another. So that's just a side note, though. But anyway, hop on the Patreon channel. I'd love to talk with you about this stuff. And I just really enjoy you being here. Thank you so much. God bless. Bye.